All right, everyone, welcome to Deep Dives with Dogs. Today's topic is about the dwindling days of the German Empire. We are not talking about World War II. I guess you could technically call that a German Empire, but I would not refer to it that way. At least I wouldn't have. Technically, it probably is, you can maybe say, but no, I'm talking about World War One. The German Empire of World War One, especially. The German Empire, obviously, probably the most powerful nation on the planet at this point in time, before really the end of the war. And there's not really much debate for that. Germany is far and away the strongest military, if not in the world, at least in Europe, but more than likely in the world. They are the most powerful nation, one of the largest nations in Europe. Not really the world, but in Europe. Which really goes to show just how weak kind of everyone else was. Like France is, for most of history, known as the strong man. It's France, big France. France is bigger than a lot of other nations, typically more powerful because of that. But Germany has really usurped them by this point. The Franco-Prussian War before World War I really kind of shows that. And a lot of the other players, they're strong, but in different ways. For instance, the British Empire, very strong, the largest empire in all of human history, but it doesn't necessarily have a singular people like a lot of the Germans have. The German Empire is big just on Germany, basically. And yeah, they have some African colonies, but it's not to the size, obviously, of the British Empire. So they're not necessarily the largest empire, but they're probably the strongest at this point. And Russia, the Russian Empire, should have been leagues and bounds better than Germany, but let's just say they weren't. Russia, not so much, but Germany, they're very powerful, and they feel they deserve quite a big piece of the world, and you can see why they would think that. They're more powerful than everybody else. Why shouldn't they be? It's kind of why World War One really starts. A lot of these nations have uncontained hatred for one another, in different ways. Not necessarily fully, but in ways of we feel we deserve things, or we feel you don't deserve this, or all that stuff. Obviously, there's more reasons why World War One starts, but just basic ideas. But Germany really shows its power in how long it survives World War One. It more or less is by itself for most of the war. It does have allies, of course, Austria-Hungary. It has the Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria. There's other nations, but most of those nations do not really stand up. They don't really last very long in the grand scheme of things. By 1918 especially, they're all basically knocked out, and it's more or less just Germany. But it really goes to show the strength of Germany, that they're still holding on. And realistically, one of the reasons Germany probably could have held on longer but wasn't able to was because of offensives that were launched in 1917 of trying to stop or trying to win the war basically before the Americans arrived en masse. Because they knew once the Americans started arriving, well, America is a fresh nation, entering this war. Very large population, a lot of resources. America is like, it's an unawakened, the bear, you woke the sleeping bear, basically. That's the idea. But Germany tries to stop, win the war before that all happens, but falls short and just ends up wasting resources, men that they just can't recover, and they really needed for the defense of Germany in the future. And in 1918 still, they're trying these offensive that don't really do anything, but they're trying to gain some spot in the future here by doing these offensives, and it just kind of wrecks the Germans. And you can really see why the rise of the funny mustached man, be very careful saying his name, YouTube doesn't like it, but the funny mustached man from Austria, funnily enough, while he's able to rise to power, when you still have a lot of the people that fought in World War I, a lot of the people that participated, he himself fought in World War I. They feel betrayed by their government, by the government of the past, and they feel we could have won. And you understand where they're coming from with this. They were more powerful than everybody else. They felt they had the right to it. But then they're denied, and then they also are humiliated after the First World War. But those last few years of World War I, you can really see a lot of the Germans kind of understanding, like, especially in the trenches. A lot of those German soldiers, they understood what was going on. Some of them didn't. Some of them felt, oh, we could have won. They couldn't have. Germany just didn't have the men, the resources anymore. And it must have, I don't know, you must have been when you're in the Kaiser's chambers, and all this is going down. You must have thought, like, what have I done? Because realistically, the Kaiser actually didn't necessarily, he didn't think the war was necessary as much. He probably wanted it. A lot of the nations wanted it. Hey, war, we have these big new toys. Let's try them out, So war's a good idea, that kind of thing. And, if you win war, you always get new stuff. And that's always nice, right? But, looking at the Austrian points against Serbia and why the whole war even started, Germany's like, yeah, Serbia's, they're agreed to most of it. We don't need a war. What's going on? But, it doesn't end up going so well. And the German Empire collapses. And it's really in a way that it affects everyone in Germany. And those dwindling days of that empire, when it's all coming down, basically, as the war is, they lost the war. You must think a lot of the people felt very slighted. Very, how could this have happened to us? And you can really understand then, through that lens, the rise of that funny mustached man and how he was able to dominate Germany, at least. That's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have any ways you can improve on these videos, leave a comment down below. I just appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.